Welcome, Exiles. I have an update for what I've been doing with Bonestorm in 0.4. I'll play some footage of a map while I go through some of the changes. Firstly, I would like to address what has been nerfed since the last patch. Two big things in particular. Fane Girt runes can no longer be stacked to get us an easy 50% plus 2 to spell projectiles. And secondly, Zenith 2 has been reworked and no longer works in the same capacity as before, so we won't be able to carry our mana needs with just that alone. As for buffs, we have two big ones as well. Mana Tempest has been a huge winner this time around. It has a much longer linger time for mapping and can even be supported by Advancing Storm, which we will be utilizing. That allows us to essentially walk with this storm and continue using it a lot longer than we were able to before. Secondly, marks have gotten some new supports, and those are very nice for the build for what we were doing this time around as well. I also want to preface that this is still a work in progress. I have swapped the build around a lot. Originally I started League Start as a werewolf version of the build, but ended up switching because it got a bit too squishy in the end game. As of right now, we are running a build that is much similar to the 0.3 version, but using spell totems instead of cast on crit. So how are we going to fix these two nerfs? Well, first off, we're going to be using a staff instead of a wand and focus. This will allow us to desecrate a suffix that is going to be the same as the Fane Girt runes effect before, so then we can still get to that 100% chance to fire 2 additional projectiles with spells. As for the change to Zenith, we're going to be making a few changes in the gear and the tree, so we're going to get a lot more mana efficiency on the tree, and where we can on our gear, we're going to be getting flat mana and mana regeneration just to help us keep the Bonestorm cost low. The good news is, since we are not using cast on critical anymore, we are not going to be as mana hungry as before. We won't be utilizing so much mana for the cast on crit procs. And also, with spell totems, they will be casting without using our mana, so once we get those set up, they're essentially just shooting for free, and we don't have to worry about their mana costs at all. So, some of the reasons that we're going to be using Bonestorm on spell totems, in addition to what I just mentioned with mana, is that they're able to fire off Bonestorms a lot faster than the player can consecutively. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but they can just shoot volleys out much quicker than players can. 2, they count as consuming power charges from you without actually spending any, so as long as you have power charges, they are constantly shooting out empowered Bonestorms, but they never eat the charges. 3rd, the spell totem gem counts as a more multiplier since we're using power charges, and those supports with more multipliers are pretty hard to come by for Bonestorm, so it's really nice as just a more multiplier by itself, in addition to, getting 3 additional totems that are shooting out the spell for us. 4th, they don't spend your mana, like I mentioned before, so once you spend the small amount of mana to get the initial cast out, they will just keep shooting Bonestorms by themselves. And then finally, they are able to take some of the heat off of us during a fight, so it's a little bit of a defensive layer. Obviously, we don't want them to take too many hits because we want to keep them on the field and doing damage, but it is nice sometimes whenever things are getting a bit too crazy. So how are we generating the charges in order to summon the spell totems? Well, first off, we're using the Resonance Keystone, which allows us to turn any frenzy charges that we acquire into power charges, and power charges into endurance charges. Our main way of doing this is via the Called Shots Ascendancy point from Deadeye. We're using Sniper's Mark with Charged Mark, Endless Mark, and Charged Profusion. This basically is going to give us a whole bunch of power charges every time it goes off. We'll be able to consume twice, we'll be able to get 2 charges per time that it's consumed, so 4 charges every single time Called Shots gets put on an enemy, and also we get Shocked Ground, which is a nice benefit as well. In addition to that, we're also using Pin on the Tree with Combat Frenzy, so that's going to give us some Frenzy charges which turn into power charges every few seconds as well, and again, we're using Charge Profusion here so that we can get at least 2 power charges every single time we proc Combat Frenzy with Pin. And as for bosses, we are using the juiced up Redblade Conduit to give us an unlimited supply of endurance charges before a boss is ready to fight. So during any setup of a pinnacle boss, we're able to just summon all of our totems before the boss spawns, so we can just start fully ready to go. Another optional thing that we can do here is using Profane Ritual. So Profane Ritual will give us power charges, which are then turned into endurance charges. That is something we can do while mapping if we'd like to get some additional charges. I have not been using it lately. I've been generating plenty of power charges, more than I honestly need to use. So this is something that is definitely useful early on, but maybe not so far into the end game. A really important part of this is supporting Bonestorm with the inhibitor support. What this does is it makes it so that it will not consume any infusions or charges, and we really need this because Bonestorm is going to want to use any power charges in order to empower itself. But we actually need those power charges for the spell totems, so this will allow us to make sure that we have the power charges to summon the spell totems, and more importantly, once we have the spell totems out, it will make every shot of Bonestorm from those totems empowered themselves. Alright, so for the full gem setup, we've got Sigil of Power, which is coming from our staff, with Prolonged Duration, Magnified Area, and Cooldown Recovery. Called shots from the Ascendancy point, with Sniper's Mark, Charged Perfusion, Charged Mark, Eternal Mark, and Magnified Area. This is going to be what's giving us majority of our power charges. Our Spell Totem, it's really important that we get a level 20 spell totem with a +3 to all spells amulet in order to get the limit up to 3. And this is going to have our 1 copy of Bonestorm with Ricochet, Fork, Deliberation, and Urgent Totems. Our main self-cast Bonestorm here. This is going to have Inhibitor to make sure that we are not consuming any of those charges. It also gives us more damage per charge or infusion. We are going to be taking advantage of this. We frequently have all 3 charge types, so baseline this is generally a 12% more damage. And we often have lightning infusions from Siphon Elements, which I'll go over in a second. And sometimes we will freeze and ignite as well, so this can be a pretty good more multiplier as well. Again, we have Ricochet and Fork. And then for the last 2, currently I'm using Efficiency 2 and Zenith 2 just to keep the mana cost very, very low. We can probably change out Efficiency 2 with some better gear and get another more multiplier on here, but I'm just not at that stage yet. Mana Tempest, this is going to be our big buff that we use pretty often. We're using Arcane Surge, Efficiency 2, Advancing Storm, and Lightning Mastery. None of these have a mana cost multiplier on them to make sure that we're able to stay in Mana Tempest as long as possible. Next up, we've got our main curse, which is Elemental Weakness, Cursed Ground, Focused Curse, Ritualistic Curse, Magnified Area, and Efficiency. Flame Wall, we are utilizing a lot of lightning infusions, so we'll be able to get the additional flat lightning damage in additional to the flat fire damage, so that's pretty sweet. We're using Spell Cascade, Fire Mastery, Prolonged Duration, Fortress, and Efficiency again. Frost Bomb we are using to get Exposure, so we're going to use Spell Echo, Potent Exposure, Overabundance, Magnified Area, and Efficiency again. Now for our Spirit Gems, we're using Combat Frenzy, Siphon Elements, and Mana Remnants. So Mana Remnants is just going to keep us topped off on mana, make sure that we are getting the full effect of Zenith 2 while we are mapping, and just in general letting us keep Mana Tempest up. Siphon Elements we are using in order to just generate additional remnants, again just for more multiplier on the Bonestorm. This is interchangeable. I've definitely tried a few things here. I've used, or I've gotten rid of this completely and put Cannibalism 2 or whatever you want on another one of the Spirit Gems. I've also been toying around with just changing this out for time of need, just to get rid of curses and just some healing while we're mapping. Not exactly sure how good this is. It seems to be pretty good uptime and again allows us to get those lightning remnants for flat lightning damage on our Bonestorm, so I've been running with it. And the star of the show, Combat Frenzy with Charge Refusion and Clarity. Basically, this is what's powering our entire power charge generation for totems along with the Sniper's Mark. Now, if we head on over to the passive tree, let's start with the ascendancy points. We're using Far Shot and then that's just on the way to Endless Munitions. The additional projectile, really the main reason why we are playing Deadeye at all for Bonestorm, just makes it a lot cheaper to cast Bonestorm, makes it a lot quicker to cast Bonestorm. We don't need as much cast speed in order to get to those max stacks, and our totems utilize this tech as well, so just in general, very, very good for Bonestorm. Here we're using Tailwind. It's just Tailwind. It's really good. It's got movement speed, it's got evasion, it's got cast speed, which really buffs up our totems as well. So, just generally good. You can swap this out for Bullseye. Bullseye may be better, actually, for full-on Pinnacle farming, just because we're guaranteed 20 stacks of critical weakness pretty much immediately. And then Called Shots, this is, again, for the Sniper's Mark, this is getting us the bulk of our power charges through our Resonance Keystone here. So I actually just reworked this tree again. I've been doing a lot of reworking of the tree, just experimenting. Right now I've settled on essentially using weapon slot 1 for all my Bonestorm and Totem needs. So, namely, the Fork and Ricochet nodes down here, some additional crit nodes, and all of the additional projectile nodes in order to save us from having to use multi-shot. Notice we do not need this final point anymore because the Desecrate can actually go up to 35, but 31 is the sweet spot, so as long as you get over 31, that saves you 1 passive point on the tree. We're also utilizing Bone Chains on weapon slot 1 to make sure that we are pinning, again, to make sure that we are getting those power charges for Spell Totems. I've recently swapped my second weapon slot to essentially just be mainly for buffing my curses. Well, 1 curse. So we've got these curse nodes here. I've got this one anointed. I was pathing over to this and getting these instead of these curse nodes up top here before. And also just additional exposure effect, since we are also putting our Frost Bomb on weapon slot 2. So since we're going to be talking about gear, let's talk about jewels while we're in the passive tree. Oh, this is bugged. We've got 3 jewel slots on the build. 1 slot will be allocated for a rare jewel, so really you're just looking for energy shield and then some crit stats, some damage where you can. The other 2 will be occupied by Prism of Belief, so this is going to be +3 to Bonestorm skills. Can't really beat that for a jewel slot. Very, very strong. And then a Megalomaniac. There's an absolute ton of different things that you can get on this. Mostly here I just was looking for Cut to the Bone, so I didn't have to anoint it. But you can anoint it. Currently I am anointing Thirst for Power for additional power charges gained whenever I gain a power charge. But there's lots of options. You can anoint Cut to the Bone, you can get Thirst for Power in a Megalomaniac, and there's just an absolute ton of different stats on the tree that you could get through Megalomaniac. So over to my gear. This is probably the most important piece of gear in the entire build, is your staff. I just recently crafted this one, but you're really just looking for the +7 to physical spell skills, cast speed, and the Desecrated Suffix. Those are the 3 most important stats on the whole staff. You can get those 3 pretty easily. Well, +7 is going to be expensive, but you can get a +6 and get those 3 suffixes very easily to get the build started. And then the hard part is going to be securing 3 useful prefixes. This one's pretty good. It's got cold and lightning damage gained and flat spell damage. So just recently got this. The 30% increased spell damage from the Iron Rune can be switched out. Currently messing around with it, but if you put... let's pull it up here, actually. If you put one of these in, you'll actually get to 100% chance to gain an additional power charge whenever you gain a power charge. So that is definitely an option, but so far it doesn't really seem necessary. It will be good for bosses, but at the moment, the Red Flare Conduit is really doing work for just getting totems out before the boss even spawns. So at the moment, I don't feel a need for it, but that is an option as well. The rest of the gear is pretty straightforward. We're just looking for high energy shield, high resistances. I crafted this from a blue base, got pretty lucky. This was honestly mostly just a chaos spam, so this was a very lucky craft that I got here. Again, just high energy shield and resistances. I got most of my chaos resistance through the rings. Skill effect duration's nice on there, just extra totem time, extra curse time, etc. Cast speed, definitely a must-have on the rings and the staff. That's going to be one of your biggest damage stats in the whole build, so you definitely need it on the staff and you definitely need it on your rings. As for the rest of this, again, pretty straightforward, just defenses and resistances. Currently I am using a Laviangas that I dropped. It's not necessary, you can use a regular old mana flasks. This just makes it so I don't have to press another button. And currently I am using the Breath of the Mountains unique Sapphire Charm, but this isn't really necessary. This just gives me some endurance charges whenever I get hit by cold damage, but you can really use anything here. Anti-slow Silver Charm, also really good, because slows are pretty brutal. And then just making sure that you have immunity to freeze and stun, very, very good to have. Just to go over any of the mechanics, if you're new to the build, I've been doing this since launch. I've made different versions of Bonestorm. The main interaction that we're taking advantage of is ricocheting and forking. So that's why we have these nodes here, and we also have, if you didn't notice, ricochet and fork on both copies of Bonestorm in the build. If you look at my video from 0.1 that goes over the mechanics, the reason why we're doing this is because Bonestorm shoots out 20 projectiles, and each one of those projectiles will fork, so you want the additional fork for another projectile, and Mana Tempest actually also allows us to split, so it'll split to 3 additional targets. Essentially, we have 20 different projectiles from Bonestorm that can all fork and split, and not only will those hit targets, but if they don't hit targets, they can hit the ground because Bonestorm is angled down at the ground. And when they hit the ground, they will ricochet with a 70% chance to ricochet to a target. This is really important for bosses because what happens is you'll hit the boss with the initial volley, and then all of those forks and splits will hit the ground and ricochet right back into the boss. This is a huge amount of damage that we get on Bonestorm that is not really calculated in the sheet DPS, but it is very noticeable. If you look at my video from the 0.1 mechanics guide, you'll be able to see exactly how big of a difference it does do on single target. Aside from that, like I said, we are using inhibitors, so I am trying to make use of siphon elements here, which also buffs up our flame wall. That's nice. We are also using frost bomb, which leaves behind some additional remnants as well. So just in general, we're doing a decent bit of remnants, so we do get some additional more damage from inhibitor here. That about sums it up for this 0.4 version of Bonestorm. I still have a lot of upgrades that I can make, a lot of damage to be had still. but it's at a point now where I felt comfortable making a video and letting everybody know how it went. So I will conclude the video, as always, with the full run of T3 Xesht, and you can see how it performs during the initial breach part of Xesht, and then setting up the whole boss rotation and that fight as well. Enjoy.
Rather not break my back.